If you leave this video, the one thing that I would want you to know is that there is no such thing as a bad character in this game, except for Amber. She is What is going on, guys? Today we're actually going to be starting off our very first video in a series of videos that I want to put together to help people get into Genshin Impact and kind of explain the way that the game works and how things are structured, and just kind of general tips about individual things along the way. In total, I have about 14 videos planned, just different topics that I kind of want to talk about, kind of explain a little bit further and stuff like that. Why should you even care that I'm explaining this? So I've been playing the game since launch. I played just at the very tail end of the closed beta 3, so I didn't have too much exposure before launch, but I did kind of play before launch. Since launch, I have achieved adventure rank 40. I do know a couple of things about the game, at least, but I just kind of want to help share the knowledge that I have gained, because I truly do believe that knowledge is power, and with that power you can also achieve great things. So the first thing that I want to talk about in this series of videos is actually going to be the characters, because the characters, in my opinion, are probably the entire reason that you would even want to play this game. The main thing is that there are plenty of characters to basically obtain and use in this game in a variety of different ways. There's different ways to build each character. There's different talents that they have that you can kind of build them around and stuff like that. Now, one of the things that we're not going to go over in this video specifically are weapons and artifacts, because these are kind of more in-depth and they need an entire video on their own. So look forward to that video if you're not subscribed. You just go ahead and do that if you're interested. So we're going to start with main character here, because that is probably the best place to start. Now, in the game, you are known as the Traveler. The reason that you're known as the Traveler is based on the story. If you pay attention to the story, I'll just kind of let you get into that. I'm not going to go over the story details in this video either. So you basically get to choose male or female. Depending on which one you choose, obviously yours may be a male in your game. Mine, I chose the female because I am... Understood. Basically, over here on the right hand side, we have our name. We have this little star right here, which actually these are for our ascension levels. So if we take a look here at Sucrose, so I actually do not have any stars here. I have not ascended them beyond level 20. That is the first level cap that you will hit on your characters, and you can actually ascend them past level 20. Once you do, the next level cap is up to 40, and then beyond that, it's up to 50. Beyond that, it should be up to 60, and then it's going to be 70, and then 80, and beyond. All right, so just know there are level caps that you're going to have to ascend beyond, like here. So I'll just go ahead and do this one. So we have level 40. If we ascend, it's going to cost some materials. Now, this is going to kind of get a little bit ahead of where we are, but when you ascend, you are going to get an increase in a few different things here. So we're actually going to get base HP, base defense, base attack. All are going to get a slight increase, and then our attack percent as well. Now, where does that attack percent come from? Somebody please correct me if I'm wrong, but this seems to just be a substat to each individual character. So like if we go to a different character here, we hit ascend, you can see that one has elemental mastery. We hit ascend here. She has regular base attack percent. And this one, HP. So her attack percent is a substat. Based on the weapon that I'm using, you can see that this of course is going to be went over in more detail in the weapons video, but this weapon in particular has a substat for attack percentage. When we are ascending, it actually, this character already has that 13.5, but it's going to be ascending her base attack percent up as well. So this is kind of viewed as like a substat to the character. Not only do we have HP, defense, and attack as base stats, but we also have a special substat for attack. This one just happens to be attack percent. So if we go ahead and hit ascend here, it's going to add a second star, as you can see, and it's going to increase our level cap. We're now able to go all the way up to level 50. And as you can see, it shows us all of the stats that it raised as well. Really quickly, let's actually go over the possible moves that you have for a character. For this specific test, we're going to stick with our main character here, the Traveler, and we're just going to kind of show off a couple of different skills. Now, if you'll notice at the bottom right-hand corner of my screen, I have the E ability. That is our elemental skill. Basically, this character in specific, she has a skill where if you click and hold it, she is going to charge up in her palm a bit of wind energy, right? She also has a Q ability, but we're going to need to get that Q ability. As you can see, it's not quite full on the meter there. So what we're going to do is just our basic attacks here. And as you can see, if we just do basic attacks, we're going to be able to hit them, right? And you'll see that some white numbers are showing up on the screen. Those white numbers are our normal physical damage that we're doing. Easy stuff, right? Now, you're also going to see some green numbers, and those green numbers actually correspond to the elemental damage that we're doing. If you notice, we're going to switch to Barbara here, and now we're doing blue numbers. That's because her element is actually Hydro, okay? We're going to go over elements, of course, in another video, but just know that your elemental damage is the color of your element, right? So we're just going to do some extra damage here. I'm actually going to heal up my Traveler because my Traveler is not quite leveled up to the point where she can survive very long, but we're just going to continue doing this, and you'll notice that our Traveler is getting a little bit of heals here. Now, let me just go ahead and quickly take this guy out. I just want to leave one enemy. I just want to leave this Summoner. So let's actually kill this guy really quick. Okay. Now that we actually have just this last Summoner left, so what we're going to do is, as we said, if we just do our normal attacks here, you can see we're just going to do white damage. That's what a lot of people seem to refer to this as, is just white damage. And then if we complete the combo with her, just by clicking, just by doing normal attacks in succession, you'll notice that we actually spit out a little bit of elemental energy. Now, it's kind of hard to see based on our little situation here. Just keep that little elemental damage in mind, because we're going to talk about a talent later that will actually kind of explain what that is. And as you can see there it happened. Maybe I can just proc it this way. Yeah, so you see there's a gust of wind coming out of our sword. Let's just say that. So as I said, we do have our elemental skill, right? And that's going to throw them back right there. That's just a typical wind element. We also have our elemental burst. So this is kind of considered like the ulti move. And Travelers in particular is a tornado that will actually gust out forward and take them away. All right. So we have our elemental skill, our elemental burst. We have our normal attacks. We don't have any kind of like shielding mechanism or anything like that. We do have a plunging attack, which you can drop straight down like that. Now I'm gonna heal up a little bit here. So as you can see here, we're actually gonna get healed. So we're gonna talk about it in a little bit. We're gonna have some healing bonuses that we're gonna talk about. We are not on the field, but we are still receiving heals. Just remember that, because we're gonna talk about that shortly. So that's basically what we've got. Now we can sprint and consume some stamina. We're gonna talk about that in a little bit. We can glide, do all kinds of good stuff like that. And basically that's the gist of it. So we have just normal attacks. We do have a charged attack. I need to talk about the charged attack. So if you click and hold, you will consume a tad bit of stamina, but you will do a charged attack, which most of them actually do fling the enemy back like this, especially for sword users. Not all attacks will, but you can actually do some pretty fun stuff. You can fling things off of, yeah, you can just fling them. Fling them off a cliff. Enemies will actually die. Just a quick tip. Enemies will straight up die if they fall into the water. Enemies cannot swim. So a lot of times it's great to be able to fling them off into the water. So now that we've actually completed all those, I'm actually going to grab this chest really quick. So what kind of stats are there? Well, you can kind of see a small little summary here. Max HP, attack, defense, elemental mastery, and stamina. So if we take a look under the details, this actually goes over a lot more stuff in detail. Now, this kind of looks a little bit daunting at first, but I promise you it's not that bad. Max HP, attack, defense, easy. Those are all pretty self-explanatory. HP is how much life you have. Attack is a numerical representation of how much damage you're able to do. Defense is a numerical representation of how much damage you're able to take. Elemental mastery. So this one is kind of unique to this game. If you increase this number, you will do more elemental damage than you would physical damage. So this says the higher a character's elemental mastery, the stronger the elemental energy that can be released. Basically, whenever you use an elemental move, if you're on PC, so it's basically your E or your Q ability, it's increasing the energy that can be released. So it's increasing the amount of damage that's possible. Increased damage caused by vaporize and melt by 0%. So as you can see here, if I dug into elemental mastery in terms of my weapon or my artifacts, then I can increase these numbers and help her do more elemental damage. Also increases damage caused by overload, superconduct, electrocharge, shattered, and swirl by a numerical value. Now that's going to scale with this number and increases the damage absorption power of shields created through crystallize by 0%. Now there's a lot of keywords in here that we're not going to really know until we go over the elemental stuff. Just know elemental mastery deals with elemental reaction damage and just any kind of elemental damage that you would possibly do. Max stamina. So when you're running around the map, and if you are on PC, if you're holding shift, that's your stamina. If you run out of it, you kind of run really slow, you kind of slowly jog. Yeah, you want to have a lot of stamina. The only way to currently get stamina is by worshiping at the statues of the seven, by offering up those animoculi or geoculi. But I don't think there's a single character that has more or less than 240, because that's pretty much what you get for doing those. Now the advanced stats. Crit rate and crit damage. If you've ever played an RPG, these are going to be pretty self-explanatory. This is a percentage on how likely you are to hit a critical. Critical can kind of be explained as if you're in a fight, bully is kind of pushing you around at the sandbox, and you get into a tussle, right? So if you're hitting him, you're just kind of like punching him, and you hit him in the shoulder, you hit him in the stomach, he hits you like in the shoulder, and then he kicks you in the shin, and then all of a sudden you just rear back and you punch him right in the nads. That's a critical hit. That's just the weak spot of the bully. So the crit rate is how often you're going to hit the enemy in the nads, right? Now the critical damage is actually how much damage you're going to apply after you do achieve that. So let's say for this character, 5% of the time I'm going to hit a critical. When I hit a critical, my damage is going to be multiplied by 1.5 times. I'm going to do 50% extra damage on top of what I would normally do. So when I hit that bully in the nads, he's going to be hurting. Healing bonus. So this is pretty much, these are kind of not really relevant unless you're looking at a healer. Okay, so healing bonus and incoming healing bonus. Basically, these are going to be tied in. You can get these by, again, weapons or artifacts, which we'll go over later. But healing bonus is kind of how much bonus healing are you going to be able to apply when you're actually healing somebody. So this can be 20.5% greater healing. So imagine this as an attack, but an attack on somebody's HP to the good. So you're going to be healing them for, if you were initially only going to heal them for 100 HP, it applies this, and you're now healing them, whether this game rounds up or not, I don't know, but you would now heal them for at least 120 HP. So that healing bonus is literally how much healing you're going to be able to give to another character. Incoming healing bonus is something totally different. I don't think I have a single character that actually has this stat applied. But basically, this is whenever you receive heals if you're not on the field. So Barbara actually has a talent where she can apply heals to another character, and she does not have to be on the field. If she is not on the field, this character may be the current active character, and she is receiving that healing because she's the only character on the field. Since she is receiving the healing, if this number goes up, it's going to add to the healing that you have incoming to you. So basically you are upping the amount of healing that this one character can receive. So earlier, whenever we were going over like how everything works with our characters, the different types of moves that we have, energy, we were consuming energy to do our elemental burst, our ultimate ability, if you will. Energy recharge is a stat that actually goes into how much energy you're going to actually receive once you kill an enemy. Certain elemental reactions will generate energy, or rather certain times whenever you perform elemental reactions, stuff like that, that will actually generate energy that you actually will then consume to refill that gauge for your elemental burst. So orbs, there are particles and there are orbs. honestly don't know how much each one normally refills, like just a flat number, but this one actually applies a bonus to that. So instead of just the regular orb and particle number, you would actually receive 116% of that orb and particle. Reduce cooldowns. Basically, this is going to determine how quickly the cooldown will actually get reduced. So reduce cooldown decreases the cooldown for characters, elemental skill, and elemental burst. The higher the value of this number, the shorter the cooldown. So if a cooldown on an elemental skill is typically 10 full seconds, if this goes up by 10%, it would then change it to 9 seconds. So if you can increase this number, then you're going to be able to perform your skills faster and more often, which is nice. Powerful shield. So powerful shield increases the ability of shields to absorb damage. The higher this value, the more damage shields can absorb. So this number in particular is not going to apply to most characters. Most characters don't use shields, but if you do happen to want to run Noelle in particular can actually provide shields to people. Now, as you can see, my Noelle does not have any additional shielding power, which is perfectly fine. But if you want that shield to be beefier, if you want it to be able to absorb more damage, then you would apply stats into that. Now, the rest of this page is pretty much talking about elemental damage bonus and resistance. So there are 7 different elements in this game, which we will go over in a different video. And then there's physical damage bonus. If you remember, we were doing physical damage whenever white numbers popped up on an enemy as we were hitting them. We were doing elemental damage whenever the green numbers showed up with this character because they were elemental. The green numbers signified wind or anemo damage, and remember we switched to Barbara, she showed blue because she had hydro or water type damage. Basically this right here, so we have some resistance, and in the elemental video we're going to talk about where this resistance is coming from. Just a quick sneak peek though, it's because of the party that I'm in. The party that I have is fire, lightning, water, and wind. The reason that we're getting that is because when you use 4 different elements on the same team, it automatically just applies a 15% bonus to each resistance. All right. But long story short, you can get artifacts or weapons that may increase these numbers for you, whether it's damage bonus, whether it's resistance to those. So there are just straight up some stats in the game that will help you resist an element's damage, which is basically like having extra defense to that exact damage. And then of course damage bonus is just a extra bit of damage applied whenever you do that specific elemental damage. Most characters are going to be applying physical damage. Most physical weapon holders are going to be doing that. So like pole arms, swords, claymores, things like that, they're going to be applying physical damage. If you are applying straight up elemental damage, you're more than likely going to be a catalyst user, or you're going to have some kind of extra ability tied into a weapon or tied into a talent somewhere that's going to allow you to perform these elemental bonus damages. Typically though, physical damage is going to be where most characters lie in terms of their actual damage, but elemental reactions do so much more damage than just most damage that you can deal, and that's where the fun really begins whenever it comes to dealing damage. But just know you can apply any kind of damage bonus, any kind of resistance that you want to any of these categories by using specific gear or weapons. So that's basically how stats work in this game. Quick recap, basically HP is how much life you have, attack is how much damage you're able to do, defense is how much damage you're able to soak up, which both of these are kind of just numerical representations. Doesn't necessarily mean that you'll always do 229 damage. It doesn't always mean that you can just tank every hit at 315 damage. That's just a numerical representation on how good these stats are. So just a quick reference, if we take a look at Zhengling is probably the biggest character that I've put most of my resources into. So our Traveler here, 229 attack, 315 defense. 1041 attack, 575 defense. So there's a huge difference between these two, and this character is going to do way more damage than this character because her stat is almost 5 times as high, whereas we, as the Traveler, are going to not tank nearly as much as Zhengling because her defense is also higher, almost twice as high. Not quite though. Next, we're actually going to move on to our talents. So the talents can basically be looked at as skills. These skills are essentially what makes the character do what they do on the field. So if we take a look at our first talent here, so this is actually just our normal attack, just a basic normal attack. And you can see all of these are going to be different for every character. Not every character is going to have a 5-hit combo. Every character is going to have a charged attack, and it's probably going to cost stamina. And every character does have a plunge attack, and it does have a low or a high plunge. That's just depending on how high you started with the plunge attack and how much damage it's going to apply. But basically, every character is going to have a set of talents that enable them to do damage or play the game to an extent. So we've already kind of taken a look at our Traveler. So we've already seen our normal attack. We've already actually seen Palm Vortex. If you remember, that was the one where she held out her hand and just did that Anemo damage, right? So as you can see, if you just tap it, it just basically explodes and boom, just sends out a bunch of Anemo damage. If you hold it, the damage and the AoE effect of it will gradually increase. Now, as you can see here, there is a condition here, the elemental absorption. If the vortex comes into contact with any of the elements listed here, not all of them, but any of these elements, it will actually deal additional elemental damage of that type. That's one of the cool things about Anemo is it can actually switch typings on you. Remember that we had this gust surge, that big tornado thing? You can actually absorb those elements as well and do that elemental damage in place of Anemo damage, which is super, super cool. So hey, you wanna do some fire damage on these dendro slimes? Just light a fire and send this tornado through that fire. It'll pick up the fire, turn into a fire tornado, and just deal fire damage to these freaking slimes. How cool is that? How freaking cool is that? So we've already talked about these three when we did our little combat thing. Slitting Wind. This is actually what's enabling us to hit that wind damage at the end of our normal attack combo. So I told you to remember that. So the last hit of a normal attack combo unleashes a wind blade, dealing 60% of attack as Anemo damage to all opponents in its path. That is a talent that actually gives us that ability, and you can unlock these talents by usually just ascending the character, basically getting them higher up in this ascension tier. So basically increasing their level cap is just the simplest way to put that. And you'll see here, this last talent I don't even have yet. It's called Second Wind. If you kill with Palm Vortex, it's going to regenerate 2% HP for 5 whole seconds. This effect can only occur once every 5 seconds. So that's worded pretty horribly. Does that mean we're going to regenerate 2% HP every second for 5 seconds? Not really sure. But you can see that it actually unlocks at Character Ascension Phase 4. Now, our Traveler actually is one of the unique characters that does not have enough talents. So we only have 5 here. If we actually take a look at any other character, you'll see that they all have 6, except for Traveler. For whatever reason, they just did not want to give one to the Traveler, but we can actually, since we've already talked about Xiangling a little bit, each of the other characters will have a unique talent to them. Now, Xiangling's in particular, when she cooks attack boosting dishes, she has a 12% to receive double the product if you cook it perfectly. It's a nice little like bonus one. She has, when dispatched on an expedition in Mondstadt, the time consumed is reduced by 25%. They're just little tidbits. They're not anything like game defining or anything like that, but just little helpful things. Next, we actually have Constellations. So Constellations are a way for you to get value out of getting duplicate characters. Now, typically the main way that you would get characters is by using the gacha system. Now, I plan to do an entire video on the gacha system itself, but typically what we would do is get a character and we would consider that Constellation 0. If this is the first time that you've obtained that character, you have them at C0, or you can say 0 out of 6, however you want to say that. Typically, once you gain your first constellation, you actually have the option to go in and consume a special item that will actually allow you to get another constellation level. I don't think I have anybody that I can currently do this for because I have actually used up all of them. But basically, you can see some characters I have duplicates for, some I don't. Beto, I've never pulled her more than this once. I cannot unlock this constellation. She has Beto's Stella Fortuna, which is just a a constellation booster. That's all it is. But each of them, they're all basically the same thing, except they are specific to the character for now. Hopefully, maybe in the future, there will be a way like just a character neutral one that can be applied to any character. That would be super cool. Otherwise, basically, you're going to be able to get different effects added onto the character. So if you do pull duplicates out of the gacha system, it's not the end of the world because the character can change the way that they play based on these constellations. So the Traveler, I will tell you that all of these constellations you will get through the story in some fashion, whether it's buying it from a shop here or there, or just getting it rewarded for hitting a certain rank or anything like that. These will basically be given to you. I don't know where this one is, if it's out there and I just haven't got it. I'm blind. Anyways, so let's actually take a look at a different character. Since we've been talking about Xiangling, I do have several of Xianglings unlocked, and I think she'll be a good example. So the first time that I got Xiangling, I did not even get crispy outside, tender inside. I did not get this bonus. But the first time that I pulled a duplicate of her, I was able to unlock this. And upon unlocking this at Constellation level 1, which is the first duplicate that you got, enemies hit with Guaba's attacks have their pyro resistance reduced by 15% for 10 seconds. Now that doesn't make too much sense because we didn't go over her talents, but she has a talent that summons a little side character called Guava, and he actually does damage on the field. So upon getting this constellation, you're increasing the power of her talent inherently. So that's actually a big deal. At Constellation 2, the last attack in a normal attack sequence applies the implode status onto the enemy for 2 whole seconds. An explosion will occur once this duration ends, dealing 75% of her attack as pyro damage. So that one is just inherently great because at the last attack, you're going to implode onto an enemy. And once that implosion explodes after 2 seconds, it's going to just deal extra damage, 75% of our attack. So if we take a look at our attack, 75% of 1,000, that's going to apply 700 and roughly 750 damage for free, just because I got a duplicate of her. It's great. So at level 3, you'll get an extra effect. At level 4, you'll get an extra effect. At level 5 and level 6, you'll get an extra effect. I personally have not obtained any characters enough to have all 6 constellations on any one of my characters. I cannot tell you exactly what happens after you get 6. From what I've seen in other YouTubers' videos is it basically gives you an extra currency for the shop that we will go over in another video that you can use to buy other things. So it's still not a complete waste once you max out the character that way. It definitely declines very heavily in value, in my opinion, but it's still not the end of the world that you get an extra one. So pulling duplicates is not the end of the world. Constellations make your character so much better. A quick one that we could go over is Noelle. So if we go to Noelle, most of Noelle in terms of her general kit is revolved around creating shields, doing large and mediocre sums of damage, and applying her defense stat as a healing bonus to the other party members. So basically, as you do damage with her, as you attack, you're going to apply your defense stat as healing to the other party members. But at her last constellation level, increases her attack by an additional 50% of whatever her defense is. So up until constellation level 6, up until you get 6/6, you've already been building her to have a massive amount of defense because you want a massive amount of healing that scales off of her defense. And then all of a sudden, you get 50% additional attack based off of her defense. So you're already going to have a massive attack stat after that. And then additionally, every enemy defeated during the skill's duration adds 1 second to the duration, up to 10 seconds. So the second part isn't even like the big deal to me. The big deal is that attack buff. So what that enables Noelle to do is a lot more damage. So it changes the way that you would play with Noelle. Personally, I would throw Noelle out, throw up her elemental skill, do as much, as many hits as I could. It's not even about doing damage with Noelle at my level, at Constellation level 1. It's literally just about doing as many hits as possible to regenerate the health for my other party members. And that, I think, is just... this Constellation level 6 completely changes the way that you would play with Noelle. Last but not least, we do have a profile page. So every single character has a profile page, and this is basically just a quick little like, hey, you can read some lore about this character, just all kinds of different information. There's tons of story that you can go through and read. I personally haven't read through like 99% of them, and they also have voiceover lines, which is super cool. You get these by actually increasing your friendship level, which oddly enough, the Traveler does not have a friendship level. If you look at any other character, you have friendship levels. And the reason that Zhangling's friendship is so high compared to some of my other characters, well, I use those 3 all the freaking time. So if you look at Sucrose, I've used Sucrose very, very minimally. Most of these bottom ones I never ever use. But typically, as you increase your friendship, it will actually unlock extra voiceover lines and stuff like that. After you ascend characters, it will let you sometimes get extra ones. So like Ascension Phase 4, Friendship Level 4, stuff like that. So you can actually get like extra lore, extra voice lines out of the character just by playing the game with that character. I guess Traveler is a terrible example, just to show you kind of what this is about.
Hey, you're not sneaking off to get a midnight snack without me, are you? Bedtime? Oh, well, good night then.
Some of these are super cool. I actually use them quite a bit for videos and stuff, but in general, they're just like extra ways to help you appreciate the character more. Story, of course, is story lore that you can read and stuff like that. But yeah, that is actually the basics of how characters work in Genshin Impact. There are tons of different ways to build characters. The one thing that if you leave this video, the one thing that I would want you to know is that there is no such thing as a bad character in this game. One of the things that I love about this game is that there is no such thing as a bad character. You can build every single character to be decent in some form or fashion, because the way that their talents are set up, the way that their constellation levels work, depending on where you have that character, it has an immense strength and typically a pretty big weakness, but everything can be built to a specific way. If you want to use, I personally use Zhangling for DPS. I use her to do massive amounts of attack, but a lot of people prefer to use her as a support. Throw down this little panda guy, let him do some damage while you switch off and do some elemental reactions with somebody else. That's perfectly fine. If that's the way that you play the game, that's perfect. She suits you pretty freaking well. I personally like to use this massive weapon and shove that spike up an enemy's butt. There is no such thing as a bad character in this game, except for Amber. She is not really. Jokes aside, Sekapoko actually built Amber to be pretty freaking good. One of her stipulations or her constellations, I think, I don't know, something in her kit makes her like do massive damage to a weak point. Yeah, so weak spots increase base attack by 15%. That kind of stuff, like if you build around that, you can do insane damage with her. I've seen him pull off like 25k, 30k, I think. Just insane numbers. And that makes her pretty freaking good. But you just gotta like playing like that. That's just gotta be your play style. Otherwise, hopefully this video helped answer some questions that you may have had about characters in general, just the way that a character works, how their talents and constellation levels go into their kit. If you do have further questions, you can drop a comment down below, or you could jump in the streams. I've been trying to stream at least 2 days a week. I'm gonna actually be switching up the schedule from what I'm currently doing, just to give me more time to go through these videos, because these videos are, in my opinion, some people out there still don't know this information, and I'd love to help those people. If you like to help other people, point them to this video if you'd like. If you have a better video out there, I don't even care if it's my video. Educate the people. Remember guys, knowledge is power. So thank you guys so much for hanging out. Thanks so much for watching. I will see you guys in the next video.